The United Nations has now adopted a resolution that condemns Israeli settlement construction, defying pressure from Israel, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, and lawmakers who urged Washington for a veto. Following the vote, the president-elect tweeted, "As to the UN, things will be different after January 20th. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a statement saying, quote, "At a time when the Security Council does nothing to stop the slaughter of 500,000 people in Syria, it disgracefully gangs up on the one true democracy in the Middle East, Israel, and calls the Western Wall occupied territory." The Obama administration not only failed to protect Israel against this gang up at the UN, it colluded with it behind the scenes. Israel looks forward to working with President-elect Trump. Meanwhile, J Street, a Jewish lobby group which supports a two-state solution, praised the vote, tweeting, "Every U.S. president since 1967 has opposed settlement expansion in the West Bank. President Obama upheld this trend today." Joining me now from Washington is Elsner, a special advisor to the president of J Street. He also had a long journalism career with Reuters, where he was stationed in Jerusalem, London, Stockholm, and Washington, covering foreign policy and presidential elections. It just mentioned that the U.S. has veto power on the council. So by abstaining, really the U.S. just paved the way for the council to approve this resolution. It's not the first time that we've seen this, Alan. Can you walk us through why this abstention is so important and so significant?
Well, this really puts on the record the United Nations and therefore the international community as being against the settlements and also against Palestinian incitement and violence. And it comes at a time when the two-state solution really looks like it's in deep trouble, with the Israeli government pushing ahead with these settlements, with no peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians and no prospect of it. And most of all, with the prospect of the Trump administration coming into office and not supporting the two-state solution, breaking with decades of bipartisan foreign policy of the United States under Republican and Democratic presidents.
You know, I mentioned this, the past 5 presidents have all had resolutions that have passed that have been critical of Israel under them. Did we see or hear this kind of criticism for them at the time that we're hearing now for President Obama?
Well, any president that allows a UN security resolution to go through gets some heat from Israel and from the pro-Israel lobby in the United States. But we should remember that the majority of Americans and the majority of American Jews support a two-state solution and oppose the settlements, and we've seen polling data for years showing that. So in fact, the president is really acting in accord with the public opinion here, with U.S. interests, and most importantly, with the American Jewish community.
We heard from President-elect Donald Trump, but we read a little we read his tweet there. Whose voice is resonating louder in the international community right now, President Obama or President-elect Trump?
Well, President Obama is only president for another month or less than a month, so his time is limited. But we've always had a tradition in the United States that we have one president at a time. It's been the tradition in the United States that the president-elect basically keeps his mouth shut until he actually takes office. And so Trump has broken this precedent. He's broken many precedents. Obviously, in a very short time, he will be the president. He'll be setting foreign policy of the United States. And there's deep worry that he will move away from the two-state solution and move away from a lot of core fundamental principles of U.S. foreign policy that have guided this nation for decades. So I think that there's deep concern all around the world, including in the Middle East, about what Trump might do.
And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu obviously said he is looking forward to working with the Trump administration. He has said that he will not abide by this vote. Is the vote bound to any sort of action by the United Nations?
No, there's no specific timeline or action or demands in this resolution. I mean, there's a basic demand to halt the settlements, but there's no force backing it up. But I think that there's great moral force behind this resolution. It shows that Israel is really completely isolated in the international community on this issue. And for the life of me, I don't see why the Israelis continue to build these settlements when they know very well that the only way to settle the conflict with the Palestinians and have peace is through a two-state solution. So why do you keep building settlements in the occupied territories? This resolution, I think, shows that the patience of the international community after almost 50 years of Israeli occupation is running out. But this is not an anti-Israel resolution, in our opinion. It's an anti-settlement resolution. It's an anti-violence resolution. It's an anti-incitement resolution. It's a very balanced resolution, and I'm very glad that the President allowed this to pass.
Secretary of State John Kerry released a statement about the future of a two-state solution. This is what he had to say. That future is now in jeopardy with terrorism, violence, and incitement continuing, and unprecedented steps to expand settlements being advanced by avowed opponents of the two-state solution. That is why we cannot, in good conscience, stand in the way of a resolution at the United Nations that makes clear that both sides must act now to preserve the possibility of peace. What's your sense for the future for this region?
Well, I think we're going into very uncharted waters. We don't know what Trump's going to do. But I think that Israelis and Palestinians alike, the majority of both communities are in support of the two-state solution because they know it's the only way to end the conflict. So I think that although in the immediate term things may look grim, there's a kind of historical logic and inevitability, I think, about having a two-state solution. I think if eventually Israelis are going to realize that just by building settlements and by perpetuating the occupation of 2.5 million Palestinians, they're putting their own democracy at risk and their own security at risk in the long term. And I think that most Israelis will realize eventually, sooner or later, that that's not the way to go.
Alan Elsner with some great insight. We certainly appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.